Back in 1981, a mysterious arcade game called Palibius popped up in Portland, causing more chaos than a cat in a laser pointer factory. Players reported memory loss and hallucinations. Was it a government experiment, or just a case of too much Mountain Dew and not enough sleep? Before we unravel the mystery, let's touch on mass hysteria. This psychological phenomenon occurs when a group of people experience similar physical or emotional symptoms, often fueled by rumors and fear rather than an actual threat. It's like a viral panic that spreads faster than a meme. But is that all that this really is? A mass hallucination? Let's dig deeper. The early 1980s was a golden era for arcade games. With titles like Pac-Man and Space Invaders dominating the scene, arcades were the social hubs of the time. It was in this vibrant atmosphere that the legend of Polybius was born. Picture this. A mysterious arcade cabinet appears out of nowhere. This wasn't your typical Space Invaders clone. Players reported everything from intense nausea to full-blown psychotic episodes after playing. Some claim they saw government agents in black suits collecting data from these machines in the dead of night. Every time someone walked up to this cabinet, they'd experience something completely different. The game supposedly featured mind-bending geometric shapes, pulsing colors, and subliminal messages that would mess with your head. People started having nightmares, losing chunks of their memory, and some even claimed they could see through time. Yeah, you heard that right. The name Polybius itself comes from a Greek historian who invented a military cipher. Pretty suspicious for just another arcade game. Nobody can find a single shred of concrete evidence that this game ever existed. No circuit boards, no cabinets, not even a legitimate photo. Just a whole lot of people who swear they remember something that might have never been there. The stories grew stranger as players claimed they'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, haunted by imagery from a game that might not have even existed. These weren't isolated incidents. Reports started piling up from different arcades across Portland, all describing similar disturbing experiences. The game seemed to affect each person differently, but one thing remained consistent. Nobody walked away from Polybius quite the same. There's this mysterious German company that supposedly made it. What arcade manufacturer sets up shop, creates one game that drives people insane, and then vanishes without a trace? The more you dig into these details, the more questions pop up. Every time someone claims to have found proof, it leads to another dead end, like a twisted treasure hunt that never ends. The government's involvement in Polybius goes beyond wild conspiracy theories, revealing a fascinating web of connections. The FBI actively monitored arcades in the 80s for more than just keeping tabs on kids spending money. During the Cold War, the government experimented with various psychological techniques, and video games provided the perfect testing ground. Inside dimly lit arcades, kids would zone out for hours in front of hypnotic patterns, while mysterious suited men collected data. The military already utilized primitive video games for training purposes, making it plausible they might test subliminal messaging or psychological manipulation through an arcade cabinet. But here's where things get even stranger. What if these government connections weren't just about mind control? What if Palibius was actually being used for something far more sophisticated? The effects players reported might just be the tip of the iceberg. Did you ever hear any wild rumors or urban legends about games at your local arcade growing up? Maybe even Polybius? Share your craziest arcade story in the comments. Looking at that famous Polybius screenshot everyone points to as proof, we've got a simple black background with a detailed Polybius logo splashed across it. The interesting part lies underneath, with copyright info and credits that look surprisingly legitimate. The wild thing is, this single screenshot stands as our only consistent piece of evidence after all these years. Anyone claiming to have proof of Polybius always references this same image. Maybe it's an elaborate arcade game cover-up, or maybe someone crafted one perfect fake screenshot that would fuel discussions for decades. Despite countless YouTube videos claiming to show Polybius gameplay, every single one is fan-made. Trust me, I've gone down that rabbit hole. ROM hunters have scoured every corner of the internet. Not a single trace of the original code exists. This is particularly telling since we're talking about a community that's managed to preserve games from the Stone Age of computing and found prototype ROMs of games that never even made it past testing. If Polybius was real, someone would have found something by now. What is even crazier is how these stories spread in the pre-internet days. Some kid would claim their cousin's friend saw men in black suits at the arcade at 3 a.m., and suddenly everyone's uncle worked at Nintendo and knew someone who played Polybius. The myth grew bigger than any actual arcade game could have been. Portland had a bunch of weird experimental games in the early 80s, and when you combine sleep-deprived teenagers, intense vector graphics, and the general paranoia of the Cold War era, you have got yourself the perfect recipe for an urban legend that refuses to die. Stephen Roach stepped into the spotlight claiming he helped create Polybius. According to him, some mysterious group approached his team in the 80s to develop the game. On paper, his story sounds amazing. Secret meetings, government contracts, the works. But his timeline does not match up with documented arcade releases, he cannot name specific people involved, and oddly enough, he only came forward after the legend got popular online. The tech specs he described do not match what was possible in 1981, and he keeps changing key details every time someone fact-checks him. Classic case of someone trying to grab their 15 minutes of fame by piggybacking on an urban legend. Even die-hard Polybius believers have trouble swallowing his version of events. Some anonymous sources claim Polybius was actually a secret Sega project gone wrong. They spun this elaborate tale about Sega's arcade division experimenting with some next-level technology that wasn't ready for prime time. The story falls apart pretty quickly, though. These supposed insiders got basic facts wrong about Sega's arcade operations in 1981, and nobody in the gaming industry had heard even a whisper about this supposedly revolutionary cabinet. Not to mention, Sega would have been all over this technology if it was real. When a company creates something groundbreaking, even if it fails, word gets around. The arcade scene was pretty tight-knit back then, and keeping something this big under wraps would have been practically impossible. CoinOporg became ground zero for the Polybius legend in the early days of the internet. The site claimed to have extensive documentation about this mysterious game, including detailed repair manuals and maintenance logs. The level of detail was impressive. Circuit diagrams, component lists, and specific troubleshooting guides. The weird part? Every single document looked legitimate enough to convince arcade enthusiasts, but nobody could ever track down the original sources. But here's where things get truly bizarre. GamePro magazine picked up the story, did this massive investigation, and basically shrugged their shoulders. They couldn't prove it existed, but they couldn't definitively say it was fake either. That non-answer just poured gasoline on the conspiracy fire. Now the German angle gets wild. Ever heard of Christian Oliver Bindler? This guy, who went by Cyber Yogi online, became the internet's prime suspect for creating the whole Polybius myth. The evidence is fascinating. He lived in Germany during the early 80s, had deep connections to the European arcade scene, and was absolutely obsessed with the psychological effects of video games. When people started connecting these dots and pointing fingers at Bindler, he completely vanished from the internet. No more forum posts, nothing. That's either the most suspicious timing ever or the perfect coincidence to fuel an already blazing conspiracy fire. Some theorists suggest Polybius was not just a game, but a communication network hiding in plain sight. In 1981, encryption technology was primitive, and arcade cabinets could have been perfect for transmitting coded messages. Government agents showing up late at night, mysterious data collection, and a game that never stayed in one place for too long. The cabinet's constant movement across Portland matches old spy techniques for avoiding detection. Those supposedly random geometric patterns could have been encrypted data packets displayed right on screen. The player complaints about headaches and confusion might have just been side effects of staring at encoded information their brains could not process. Even the game's sudden disappearance makes more sense if it was actually a covert communication system that completed its mission. While we cannot prove this theory, it explains a lot of the weird inconsistencies in the Polybius story. The FBI's involvement in arcade culture ran deeper than most people realize. Remember those winners don't use drugs screens that popped up between demos? That wasn't just some random public service announcement. It was part of a massive FBI initiative to reach young gamers. FBI Director William Sessions had his name plastered on every arcade cabinet in North America. Talk about dedication to the cause. The military was actually pretty tight with game companies back then, working on some legit training simulators. Let me tell you more about that. the Army actually created specialized simulators using modified arcade hardware to train soldiers in everything from vehicle operation to tactical decision-making. We're talking sophisticated programs that could simulate real combat scenarios. The most fascinating part, some of these training games found their way into actual arcades. Bradley Trainer, a modified version of Battlezone, was specifically designed to teach tank commanders. Atari worked directly with the military to create it. Every good ghost story needs a grain of truth, and Palibius serves up the perfect mix of plausible tech specs and impossible claims. The legend persists because somewhere, in the back of our minds, we know arcades were the perfect testing ground for something sinister. If you enjoyed this video, you're in luck. This is the first episode of my Gaming's Unsolved Mysteries series. If the second episode is out, you can click on it right here on the screen. If not, don't worry, it's coming out in just a few weeks. In the meantime, why not check out another video? Click on which Spider-Man game nails the comic book experience right here. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any updates. And remember, seek to learn, not judge.